Greetings, friend. Do you wish to look as happy as me? Well, you've got the power inside you right now, so use it and send $1 to Best Darn Diddly. You can find us on patreon.com or donate to us directly on PayPal at bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. Don't delay. Eternal happiness is just $1 away.
$1 for eternal happiness and to support one of my favorite podcasts. I'd be happier with $1.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we're scheming for a good time as we review Sideshow Bob's last Gleaming. And of course, joining me as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I honestly was a little shocked when the episode points out that this is the 5th time we're already going to be seeing Sideshow Bob. That seems too much almost in the 7th season.
Man, it's crazy just to think. We were just talking before we even got on the air. I mean, this is our 125th podcast, dude. Like, we've covered more episodes already. And yeah, just the fact that in 7 seasons, they've squeezed Sideshow Bob in 5 times is pretty crazy.
I'm just glad that Kelsey Grammer likes playing the character enough to keep coming back on to do it, because he's got some really great lines every time he's on the episode. But we will eventually get there, I believe, Miles. So let me go ahead and throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the Kleenex at the snot party. It is Miles.
Ew, dirty. Since you brought it up, I was actually struggling to find out where I was going to put all the facts I have for today's episode into this podcast. So, since you mentioned it, being the 5th time that Sideshow Bob has appeared, according to the commentary, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein actually felt going into this episode that both Sideshow Bob and Itchy and Scratchy should make an appearance in every season. So basically there should be one episode dedicated to them in each season. And working on this episode made them realize just how tall of an order that is, because it becomes increasingly more difficult to find things for these characters to do.
I guess that's why in a future season they'll actually bring in Cecil,
brother from another series. Yeah, that's such a good episode. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you love the turn of Sideshow Bob in that one, which of course, after that he turns back, but that's okay. I always seem to enjoy the Sideshow Bob ones, although this one, I feel like it's got a couple plot holes in it, but it's still an enjoyable episode.
I'm excited to hear these plot holes. I'm sure that we'll discuss them as we go along. But one thing I want to note is, according to the director's commentary, which again featured Bill Oakley, Josh Weinstein, and first-time director Dominic Palcino, which they went on and on talking about how crazy it was that this was his first episode to direct himself, because this episode was difficult on the level of a Treehouse of Horror episode because of how many new elements they had to create. If you look at all the scenes in this episode, most of them took place on the military base, which means that literally everything had to be created out of nothing, because they don't have any stock footage to go back to of the usual sets that we see The Simpsons act in.
Yeah, all new backgrounds in every scene for the most part. That's difficult.
And this one was also noted to be very difficult from a writing standpoint. So they are dealing with a very difficult episode in general from every area of creation.
In general.
So we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk more about that as we get into it. But first, let's start this episode. Sideshow Bob's Last Gleaming originally aired on November 26, 1995. We start with the chalkboard gag. Wedgies are unhealthy for children and other living things. And we get one of my favorite couch gags, actually. It's the Simpsons as underwater creatures swimming through their living room to their seashell couch to turn on their clam television, I think it was.
Aren't they just sea monkeys?
Sea monkeys. They're like sea creatures. It's fun.
C men plus C people equals
Society,
Miles.
it's C Simpsons.
Oh, wait, we're not doing South Park. I always forget that.
The episode officially opens with the Krusty the Crown with the God damn it.
I want to try that.
The episode opens with the Krusty the Clown show, and it's Krusty basically doing his best Mark Summers impersonation because they're very clearly parodying Double Dare in this instance.
I'd like to thank everybody who contributed to the Krusty's Canned Food Drive. Your generous donations have made this our slipperiest, slimiest, slopstickle course ever!
In the background, we actually see Sideshow Mel is having to suffer through this awful, awful obstacle course, and he looks miserable doing it.
Our contestants will drop out of my nose and blurp into a tub of refried beans. From there, they'll stumble down a sluice of rich, edgy béarnaise sauce. How can we afford it? It's rancid! Then, at the finish line, a scrumptious parfait of pudding, pickle brine, and detergent with a writhing pile of kids will grope blindly for hot dogs.
Krusty, please! It burns! This is another classic opening for The Simpsons, as we know that coming through the television is a common way to open the show, and in this case, we see Bart and Lisa are laughing along at Sideshow Mel's misery. Immediately, we have Homer adding his 2 cents. That Sideshow Mel thinks he's so big. Whatever happened to Sideshow Bob?
Don't you remember, Dad?
And like we have done, I think, at least once, if not twice before, Homer's always like, hey, what happened to old Bob? Even though he's been heavily involved in everything Bob has done. And that's what we get right here, is a quick sequence going through all of the things that he's tried to do in the past, including framing Krusty, trying to kill Aunt Selma, and rigging an election, not to mention trying to murder his son, Bart.
Oh, yeah. But what I'll mainly remember is the laughter. I wonder what he's doing now.
And as we hear Homer's thoughts, we cut to Springwood Minimum Security Prison. And it's sitting wide open. Like the gate's not even closed. Sideshow Bob is actually building a model building inside of a bottle. It's the Westminster Abbey. And he's just about done. All he has to do is set the tiny little clock hands to Greenwich Mean Time. A bunch of laughter erupts from the nearby room, and Bob actually kind of jumps with a startle and ends up knocking down his creation.
My dear Abby!
And he goes next door to discover that it's the Krusty the Clown show on the television that has all of the other inmates in stitches.
This is the way we mop the floor, mop the floor, mop the floor.
Oh, must you bray night and day at that infernal television?
Oh, look who's talking. Yeah, Bob, you used to be on this show.
Don't remind me. My foolish capering destroyed more young minds than syphilis and pinball combined. Oh, how I loathe that box. An omnidirectional sludge pump droning and burping.
Look here, that's enough now. I own 60% of that network.
And we actually, this third prisoner who claims owns 60% of the network is clearly depicted to look like Rupert Murdoch. And that's actually the president of Fox at the time. And this caused a lot of issues for The Simpsons behind the scenes. So we've discussed in the past that The Simpsons have a unique deal where they cannot be censored for their content. They can be censored for like inappropriate things that can't be done on television, like cursing and things of that nature. But they actually have it in their contract where they cannot be censored by Fox just because Fox doesn't like the joke. This, however, got them a lot of phone calls saying that you cannot do this. Like, you cannot put him on your show like that. You cannot depict Rupert Murdoch in jail. Like, this is not okay. but the Simpsons stood their ground. And they actually assumed that they were going to eventually just have it removed for them, kind of like what happened to South Park a few years ago with the whole Allah thing where they wanted to show it and they refused. So basically the Simpsons just assumed they'd turn it in and then the network would just cut it on their own. But they refused to go along with it. However, what actually ended up happening, according to the commentary, is apparently some brave executive decided to actually walk into Rupert Murdoch's office and explain the situation. And Rupert Murdoch said, and I quote, "I would be honored to be in jail on The Simpsons." So the joke got to stand.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, pretty
him.
cool, actually. I mean, the dude's probably a scumbag and is way too rich to like have any of this really affect him or matter. But the fact that he's just like, yeah, that's cool. Put me in jail. It's fine.
Well, I mean, or somebody actually practicing the steer into the skid part, so where it like actually looks a lot better if you just play along with the gag.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good publicity stunt too, in a way, for him.
Honestly, people probably already assume the dude should be in jail for something, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. I suppose you don't like tabloid newspapers either, Miles. Oh, wait, never mind.
That's actually how we end our scene in prison, and we cut to the United States Air Force Base, which is not affiliated with U.S. Air.
Dope!
The prisoners are actually having like duty to clean up the grounds, I guess, because they're going to be having...
He said duty!
They're going to be having an air show at this Air Force Base.
Well, Miles, there's something that immediately jumped out at me about Bob in this scene, and I don't remember if it was in the previous scene, but I definitely noticed it right off the bat in this one, and that was Bob's prison number. Did you happen to look at that?
Of course, it's the same prison number it has always been for Sideshow Bob, A113, which is, of course, the hidden number that's in all of the Pixar stuff, and that's because this tradition with this prison number was started by Brad Bird, of course, when we first met Bob all the way back in season 1.
You know, Miles, I feel like you may have been listening to some podcast to get that information.
The prisoners are cleaning up the airbase, and Bob's excited because he's just raked up the last condom wrapper, which I think it's ironic that he's using a rake, just for one thing. Just because of his encounters with them in the past. But yes, the last condom wrapper, and right as he gets it all piled up, a jet does a flyby, and all of the trash goes everywhere.
At least that military personnel is being safe, Miles.
Bob immediately objects. "Oh, I renew my objection to this pointless endeavor, informally now and by affidavit later, time permitting."
Shut your word hole. We gotta get this place clean for the air show.
Air show? Buzz-cut Albanians spewing colored smoke from their whiz jets to the strains of Rock You Like a Hurricane? What kind of countrified rube is still impressed by that? And that's when we cut to the Simpsons. They see an ad for the air show, and everyone is excited, except for Marge, to be fair. Everybody but Marge is like, yay, yeah!
Yes! All right!
And Marge is kind of like, yeah.
It's the worst way to fake it. Yeah.
Even Lisa, though, I mean, she's excited.
Yeah.
She wants to meet the first female stealth bomber pilot. During the Gulf War, she destroyed 70 mosques, and her name is Lisa, too. Yikes. That actually seems really out of character for Lisa, to be fair. But
she acts a little out of character a few times in this episode.
Yeah, it does not seem like that would mesh with her normal political views. But hey, it's still a fun joke, as is Bart, who just wants to see some birds getting sucked into engines. Rare birds.
Oh. This year I'm making earplugs out of biscuit dough.
Ding!
They're ready!
The thing is, like, that seems like the type of thing that you would find in, like, a Martha Stewart magazine or, like, the Oprah magazine or some crap like that would just be, save money by baking earbuds.
As someone who's required to wear hearing protection at his job, that is incredibly gross.
I hope they're not reusable.
I may not actually wear them.
I meant the dough. I wasn't talking about your nappy ass ears.
I mean, I wear mine all the time. I forgot some of my coworkers listen to this podcast. I'm always wearing hearing protection.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's why you hear so well.
Hey, my hearing has not changed in 3 years. We have hearing tests, sir.
Fair. So the Simpsons are excited. Bob's back in jail, and he's getting more and more fed up from the television. From the other room again, we hear some really dumb show coming over. It's on the commentary, they talked about how they like to make fun of television at a time because a lot of it was just old people who would say inappropriate things, such as this one, where it's an old person saying, "What, you mean you two aren't knocking boots?" which gets a laugh track. And even more laughter from the inmates, but it just annoys Bob more and more. One thing that's really funny about this scene is after all of the dumb jokes from a very clearly just idiotic television show, you actually hear the Fox sound that you hear at the end of every episode of The Simpsons. So it's like basically saying through sound effects, we can tell that this is yet another crappy Fox television program.
Yes, and I love the expression on Bob's face where like it clicks with him where it's like, oh, yeah, it's Fox.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and they're going to do a callback to this.
They do, and they make a lot of fun at Fox's expense in this episode, as we already talked about Rupert Murdoch.
Remember this joke later.
So the next day we actually see Sideshow Bob at the Air Force Base, and he's starting to work, he's polishing a jet when he starts to get harassed by Wiggum. "Hey, you! This state's not paying you 5 cents an hour to stand around. Now get busy!"
"Oh, I'll get busy. I'll get very busy indeed."
You still got it, Bob. And this whole scene's great, but it's amplified to be even greater because of how passionate Kelsey Grammer's performance is. And we've already talked about it a little bit, but those laughs specifically, even though I think he's reportedly hates doing them, it's so much fun to hear him get into character and really let loose with that craziness. And it'll actually
be one of the best evil laughs in the history of television. That's all I'm going to say.
Definitely got to be up there. I can't off the top of my head think of a better evil laugh.
Maybe Homer's.
Even his is not.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I mean, his he fumbles through it. I love Kelsey Grammer.
Sure. Bart is in usual just being a dick mode, and he's harassing these soldiers. He actually makes fun of somebody. "Hey, way to guard the parking lot, Top Gun."
"I have 3 medals for this."
And we see Private Squeaky Voice Teen.
Yeah, it looks like it's almost a sibling.
Yeah, like maybe a cousin. Yeah, related in some way. As they're done cleaning up, the prisoners are boarding the bus, but Wiggum notices something. "Hey, where's Sideshow Bob and that guy who eats people and takes their faces?"
"I'm right here, Chief."
"Oh, well then where's Sideshow Bob?"
He ran off."
"Oh, great. Well, if anyone asks, I beat him to death, okay?"
Right.
Because that's so much better. Oh,
then
God.
letting people know that a mastermind has escaped? Hell yeah, I'd sleep sound at night.
So, again, though, we talk a lot about how The Simpsons manages to still be a voice on things happening in today's society, and this joke is so ahead of its time in so many ways.
Yeah? Enough said.
Yeah, I guess. The tour guide is calling for everybody to bring their attention elsewhere to this particular vehicle in which I am currently standing next to. The Harrier Jet is one of our more dollar-intensive ordnance delivery vectors.
5 tires?
Hold on.
Am I seeing things?
Ordnance delivery vectors. That's great. Yeah, but Marge is just impressed by the number of tires that's on this thing. And although it looks complicated, it's so well designed even a child could fly it.
Can I fly it?
Of course you cannot.
That's another part where I felt it was almost out of character for Lisa to be the one instead of Bart.
Yeah, Bart would make more sense, though. I guess Lisa could arguably just be so inspired by her stealth bombing hero that she wants to get in a plane to take off.
It does stay true to her character arc in this particular episode, Miles. It's almost so formulaic.
Well, something about this episode that's a little bit outside of the Simpsons formula is that there is so very little Homer. And this next sequence is one of the only scenes that's really his main focus. He comes across a free Duff sign and, of course, declares, "Viva life!" He starts downing drinks, but as all of the other people that were surrounding the sign start to walk away, we see that the sign actually says, first of all, it says, "Duff in the Air Force, 50 years of flying high," which, think of what you will on that. But more importantly for Homer, we see that the free Duff was actually alcohol-free Duff, and worse, I think it was $6 a cup, and Homer was already up to $48.
So he had 8 beers in the matter of seconds.
Thank goodness it was alcohol-free for his sake.
Yeah, but think about that, man. Back in 1995 pricing time, yeah, that's a lot. But in today's modern society, $6 for a beer at an event is almost a steal at this point in time.
For a non-alcoholic beer, though, you'd have to pay me $6 to drink it.
Well, yes, that's because we have common sense.
Something that isn't common knowledge. In fact, I was really excited to learn this fact from the commentary. Our next scene, we see a line of children that are trying to sit in a real F-15 fighter. And Milhouse is already in the cockpit pushing buttons and pretending to fly. And actually, he's making machine gun noises. And he's very specifically targeting his parents.
Take that, Mom! Take that, Dad! Send me to a psychiatrist, will you? Take that, Dr. Sally Waxler! Click.
So, this sequence originally was just a joke, but it was actually the very first time there was any reference to Milhouse's parents having problems, maritally speaking. And it actually inspired the season 8 episode, A Milhouse Divided, which we'll be getting to in just a season from now.
Dang, already.
It's cool, though, that just this one joke inspired an entire episode. I love that, and I think that's something that is special to Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, just the way that they do have that knowledge of the characters, and they notice things like this whenever it's like, oh, hey, Milhouse's parents are probably having problems according to this, psychological breakdown that Milhouse is having in this cockpit. And just the fact that they note
15-second bit.
Yeah, that 15-second bit turns into a 23-minute episode. And I mean, we haven't reviewed it yet. And, we like to hold our opinion on episodes until we get to them. But A Milhouse Divided is an episode that I'm excited about. I think that's the one where we get, what is it? Shit.
Can I borrow a feeling?
The song is great, but I was actually thinking of when they're playing Pictionary and he's drawing his dignity.
It's dignity!
Just take it.
Go ahead, Homer, laugh. I already did. Sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves by a season.
But again, just really cool that this moment turns into an entire episode.
Absolutely.
For now, though, back to this episode, Sideshow Bob has now snuck off and he hid behind a statue to escape Wiggum. And now he's trying to sneak into the Colonel's washroom. He's listening to Colonel Happablap and trying to mimic him, I guess, or learn his mannerisms so that he can mimic him in the future.
Isn't his name Colonel Happablap?
It is Colonel Happablap, and this is one of those things that I mentioned at the top of the show, how difficult the writing for this episode was. And just coming up with this character's name became quite a daunting process. And it was actually George Meyer who just blurted the name out after like a 12-hour day of being locked in a writer's room. And they just had to get this locked in. And he just basically mouthed that out randomly, and it stuck. They're like, yep, Happablap, that's him.
Happablap? And then everyone's really tired. They've been there for 12 hours, so they're laughing at everything. Yeah, that works.
Now, that character was specifically written for R. Lee Ermey, who you may know from Full Metal Jacket, or he's also the voice of the General in Toy Story.
And he's always the cop in the newer Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, and so that was specifically written for him, and apparently, just like most of the guests we hear about on the Simpsons, this guy was just a super nice guy, really easy to work with, absolutely hilarious, and fully embraced getting into the character. He got it instantly, and just gave a really passionate performance every time he was delivering these over the top lines. Another cool Simpsons guest star that's always fun to hear about.
I think he just recently passed away, like within the last couple of years too.
I did not hear that.
I might have made that up, but I thought he died recently. Now I feel like I need to know.
Double check that.
Yeah. Yep, he died April 15th, 2018.
Tragic. So basically just almost a year ago now.
Yep.
Less than a year ago, wow. Hapablap is kind of scolding people, and he talks very intense, just like he does in most of his movies. In this case, he's actually caught Bob essentially in the private washroom, and he's scolding him. "Sweet Enola Gay, son! I'm gonna come in there and corpse you up and mail you to mama." He breaks in the door, but Bob is nowhere to be found. "Got my knuckles all lined up for nothing." And he actually kisses his hands. "Sorry, ladies."
And I like, too, because we got him saying the line about he'll tear you up like a Kleenex at a snot party.
Yeah, you're right. The line "Sweet Enola Gay Son" is actually a reference to the airplane that dropped the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima.
Yo. The more you know. Bling.
That's just another one of those little facts that they slide into The Simpsons that are always a lot of fun, and I'll have more to say on that later. But what actually happened in the bathroom, Sideshow Bob had managed to hide behind a wastebasket so that he wasn't seen.
He was actually in the wastebasket because you see the door kind of swing open on the wastebasket.
And you see his eyes. Yeah, you're right.
What a trashy joke.
Back outside, Bart is getting a history lesson from his grandpa when he points out a hunk of junk, and Grandpa is quick to correct him.
"Oh, yeesh, you're ignorant. That's the Wright brothers' plane. At Kitty Hawk in 1903, Charles Lindbergh threw it 15 miles on a thimbleful of corn oil. Single-handedly won us the Civil War, it did."
Little known fact about that battle at Kitty Hawk, Charles Lindbergh was wearing an onion on his belt while he made that fateful flight.
To win the Civil War almost 40 years after it was ended.
So Bart is quick to ask his grandfather, "How do you know so much about American history?"
"I pieced it together mostly from sugar packets."
Interesting. Lot to ask about that. We cut back to Bob, who is now making his way into restricted areas, and when he's stopped by a guard for an authorization code, he quickly goes into his Colonel Hapablap impersonation, and it's spot on.
This isn't an actual guard that he can see either. It's over an intercom.
Right, yeah, he's just communicating. There's no visual. "Code, son, this is Colonel Hapablap. That fool McGuckick sprayed runaway foam all over Chuck Yeager's Acura. Now get out there with the Camwall triple time."
"But Colonel, I'm under strict orders."
"Sweet Enola Gay, son! Get moving or I'll tear you up like a Kleenex at... a snot party."
"Sir, right away, sir."
I love that Bob is too dignified to get that line out. I also love that, according to the commentary again, this line broke Kelsey Grammer. He just could not get it out with a straight face. He kept cracking up over and over and over again. And according to Bill Oakley, I think it said he took somewhere about 11 or 12 takes to actually get it all the way out.
Oh, the Kleenex at a snot party one?
I think it was the Yeager's Acura line where he sprayed runway foam all over Chuck Yeager's Acura. Just the whole line and this whole sequence in general, though.
Yeah.
It's funny to think about Kelsey Grammer just getting the giggles.
Yeah.
We do get another quick Homer joke. Like I said, he's featured very little in this episode, but he wasn't able to find any aspirin for his wife's headache, so he got her some cigarettes instead.
Good old pack of Laramies.
Marge is clearly not having as good of a time as everybody else is at this air show, and it gets worse because the public announce system starts to squeal right in Marge's ear after she just said she has a headache.
Oh. It's the worst microphone or air horn or whatever the hell it's called. I forgot the name of it. Speaker system ever.
Yeah. It's General Happablap coming over the loud system.
Ahem! Ladies and gentlemen, what a day for an air show! Not a cloud in the sky!
And just then we see Sideshow Bob leaving the hangar, pushing a wheelbarrow that has a 10 megaton nuclear weapon inside. And we get the classic Bob gleam as he says, except perhaps a mushroom cloud. Dink! And then he almost drops the bomb. Carefully laughing as he gets his plan underway. And that is going to bring us to the end of our first act. We are going to be right back to find out what Bob could possibly be doing with this nuclear bomb as soon as we hear a quick message from some buddies of ours.
Hey guys, I'm here to talk about a serious problem today. One that can affect us all, but it's also a problem that can be fixed with everyone's help. I'm Richie the Whiz Kid, and I'm talking about podcasts. So many podcasts in the Somebody's Network need your help. They are being malnourished. Some are living in terribly harsh conditions, and some are Canadian. But with your help, a corner can be turned for these poor podcasts, especially in regards to Best Darn Diddly. You can go to popthreads.com and use the code Simpsons at checkout. Or you can buy Best Darn Diddly merch at tpublic.com. Most importantly, you can go to patreon.com/bestdarndiddly to donate now for as little as $1 a month. For less than 4 cents a day, you can bring a smile to these poor podcasters' faces. So let's work together to end the poverty of these podcasts. Let's be honest, you were probably just going to get a Krusty Burger with that dollar anyways. Cut to the pictures of starving podcasts.
My name is Patsy the Angry Nerd, lover of sharks and science.
This is Ashes Von Nightmare, the mistress of Merlot and real housewife of Transylvania.
And I'm Agent Nicole, the Ironborn and Goddess of Giggles. Join us each and every Thursday as we discuss all the characters you love and love to hate.
That's right, we go in-depth in our discussions of origins, the things that make them unique, and their contribution to pop culture and society.
We also incorporate them into battles that showcase their skills and talents. All this, plus Patsy's Science Fact, the Von Nightmare Vineyard Wine Recommendations, Agent Nicole Files, and more each week on Throwdown Thursday. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at TD Thursday Pod. And we will see you next Thursday.
We come back for our second act and see that the air show is about to pick up. We have Happablap on the microphone. To slip the surly sounds of earth and touch the face of God, to fly the dream of man and flightless bird alike. And now, hold on tight as we blast through the thrilling highlights of aviation history. Say, did somebody say box kites?
No!
And Martin, who couldn't be happier, leads a parade of kids all flying kites at an air show.
The common box kite was originally used as a means of drying wet string.
The music that's playing is no better entertaining than the box kites themselves, and it's still very, very screechy and actually in Marge's ear.
Oh, it's a perfect Martin moment.
As we are seeing this occur, we actually start having the ping pong effect here, where we're kind of going back and forth between what's happening at the air show and what Sideshow Bob is doing behind the scenes. And something I'll point out real quick, Sideshow Bob is actually whistling the theme to Doctor Strangelove during this sequence, which this episode very strongly parodies Doctor Strangelove in a lot of places.
Yeah, you definitely are going to get quite a few references to that movie in this episode.
Especially when we go to the underground bunker, then it gets just absolutely spot on. Again, Marge is just miserable. It really sucks for her, and everybody goes nuts when asked if they have a need for speed, except for Marge.
Yeah.
Yet. So, time for the pride of the United States Air Force, the British-made Harrier jump jets.
Rock you like a hurricane.
Lisa is confused as to why her father isn't actually watching.
Why jerk my neck around like a goon when Tyrannovision decides what I should look at?
And we see Homer watching a giant screen at the air show, which honestly, this is how a lot of people watch sporting events when they go to live sporting events. I mean, here in Texas, the Dallas Cowboys Stadium is more known for its giant screen than anything else.
Absolutely. And it always tells you what to look at.
You don't even have to think. Good for you. Obey. And speaking of obey, that's exactly what Sideshow Bob wants everybody to do as he takes control of the magic box that tells everyone what to think.
I love the bit where Homer sees Maggie on the TV and it's like right in her face too, which is really weird that he can get that close to her. And he's going, "Oh, look, it's Maggie." And then it changes to Bob.
Yeah.
Maggie?
Hello, Springfield. Sorry to divert your attention from all the big noises and shiny things, but something's been troubling me lately. Television. Wouldn't our lives be so much richer if television were done away with?
What? Surely he's not talking about VH1.
Why, we could revive the lost arts of conversation and scrimshaw. Thus, I submit to you, we abolish television permanently.
Go back to Massachusetts, Pinko.
Oh, and one more thing. I've stolen a nuclear weapon. If you do not rid the city of television within 2 hours, I will detonate it. Farewell.
Rabble.
The TV actually clicks off and everybody starts to go into a panic, but then the TV clicks back on again. By the way, I'm aware of the irony of appearing on television in order to create, but don't bother pointing that out.
Run!
So everything goes into pandemonium at this point, and I love as people are racing out of the base, there's the squeaky voice guard sitting there trying to offer out stamps for re-entry. Bart is trying to get lost away from the crowd because he wants to be around when those guns start going off.
Yeah, he does. Typical Bart.
Lisa is concerned but decides to stay with her brother. So they both end up locked inside the Air Force Base.
Bad Simpsons kids.
Wait! My children are in there!
You must be very proud, ma'am.
That's such a good misunderstanding joke. I love that so much.
Yeah.
She should probably say my 8 and 10-year-old are stuck in there.
I had a little issue with Bob's television appearance right there because at one point the two fighter jets are right in front of the television watching it, and they're just kind of hovering there. Like, they're not going forward or backwards. They're just hovering up and down. And I'm not a fighter jet expert, especially ones made in Britain, but I think they still would have to be going a little bit forwards or backwards.
That is specifically what the Harrier jet is known for.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a trait specific to that model of jet.
Well, thank you, Miles. I felt a little confused on that one.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I don't know anything more than that, but the Harrier jet is the one that was in the movie True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis, if you recall, and it was the one that's able to like hover. Yeah. That's pretty much the ins and outs of my knowledge of military weaponry, but
that everyone knows that movie was 100% realistic too.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. They would not lie to me truthfully.
Oh, but
Nah. All right, so back to the Simpsons. Back to the Simpsons. We cut to this underground military base I was talking about, and this is where we get into the Doctor Strangelove parody. There's a council of people down below. I think you said Dr. Frink was there. We have Mayor Quimby, General Hapablap, some of the bigger minds of Springfield. But we actually have Quimby at least doing a good job for Quimby. Our city will not negotiate with terrorists. Is there a city nearby that will?
No need, sir. We'll find that head case faster than Garfield finds lasagna.
And he just gets crickets and a blank stare.
Oh. Sorry, my wife thought that was gangbusters.
We get back to Topside, and I'm almost positive they just used this joke not that long ago in a Treehouse of Horror episode, but maybe I'm mistaken. We have the guards searching the base, and when they find a porta potty, Grandpa is inside, and he complains that the elevator only goes to the basement, and somebody made an awful mess down there.
I honestly don't remember if they've used that one or not. We've had too many episodes at this point, Miles.
Oh, no, it's
the neighborhood
tool
of 125.
Shed. I'm thinking of the tool shed in the front yard is what it is.
Oh, yeah, the tool shed that we'll never see again until...
Similar but not the same.
He's getting old, Miles.
Another very quick joke here, according to IMDb. The guards we see open the doors to Hangar 18, and they actually very quickly see an alien, and they yell, "Watch out, he's got a probe!" So they slam the doors back down. This is a reference to the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash in the 1940s, or the alleged crash, I guess I should say. We'll leave that one to our friends at the Secret Transmission podcast. You should check them out as well, part of the Somebody's Network. But according to this legend or this alleged incident, there are actually alien spaceship parts that were held in Hangar 18 of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Which we all know, truthfully, it's Bender.
Exactly. We do come to find that out at some point. Like I said earlier, Bart is looking for mischief, and Lisa has been chasing after her brother, and she actually finds him in one of the offices, and he's flying a pen and pencil around making war noises. Bart, what are you doing? We've got to get out of here.
Target sighted. Launching air-to-nerd missile. Click.
He launches a missile that hits Lisa right in the face. Ow! Come on, Mom and Dad are waiting. And she starts to actually drag Bart out of the room. This sequence cuts back to the underground meeting we talked of earlier. Oh, I guess Krusty was there because he's part of this conversation.
Well, they have the TV people coming in this.
That's right. They're meeting with the TV execs because they've got to figure out the TV people because they've got to figure out what to do about Bob's demand.
Bob is not here. We have searched every square inch of this base, and all we have found is porno.
We have only 20 minutes left. Send in the esteemed representatives of television. Kent Brockman, Chespirito, Krusty the Clown. And we also see a few others file in. Of the weight of this situation, Krusty immediately dials in on that pornography.
Hey, now this is my kind of meeting.
Gentlemen, it's time we face up to the unface-up-toable. We must sacrifice television in order to save the lives of our townspeople.
Whoa, let's not go nuts. Would it really be worth living in a world without television? I think the survivors would envy the dead.
I appreciate your passion on behalf of your medium, but I'm afraid we are out of options. Television must go. May God have mercy on our souls.
I don't know why, but I've always enjoyed I appreciate your passion on behalf of your medium. I just feel like it's a little bit above Quimby's character intelligence, but like it's also kind of mayorally something that you would say. And I don't know why. I just always like that line.
I actually really appreciate, too, that Quimby is actually doing, like, a pretty good job here. This is actually probably the right choice in a situation where you have a bomb about to go off. You have to make the hard decision sometimes.
Yeah, and this is before internet was easy to get onto and ease of access, so it's not like you just pull up YouTube and live without an actual television at the time.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. One other thing to note, we talked about the Doctor Strangelove references. This whole sequence was actually, Krusty was essentially parodying George C. Scott, who was the actor that was in the movie Doctor Strangelove. And
in a Simpsons episode.
This is going to get real meta because in the DVD commentary of Doctor Strangelove, they actually talk about how they got George C. Scott's performance to be so big. And apparently Stanley Kubrick would actually tell George C. Scott during almost every take to just do one for fun. One that's so over the top we'd never use it. And those were the takes that they essentially used throughout the majority of the movie, including what this sequence was parodying. Now, the fun part of this is the Simpsons creators on the commentary track wanted to point out that they were now a DVD commentary talking about a DVD commentary.
Whoa.
So I would like to just take a moment to point out that we are now a podcast talking about a DVD commentary, talking about another DVD commentary.
Meta.
And both of us should duck and cover if there are any air-to-nerd missiles inbound.
Or if there's a Best Darn Diddly review show in the near future about this episode.
Oh my god, that would be the ultimate tribute. So, the hard decision has been made. Television, it seems, is going away. The television channels are destroying their towers.
Why wouldn't they just turn it off?
And we actually see Kent Brockman giving his final farewell. And as my final newscast draws to a close, I'm reminded of a few of the events that brought me closer to you. The collapse of the Soviet Union, premium ice cream price wars, dogs that were mistakenly issued major credit cards, pin that, and others who weren't so lucky.
I feel like that those two go together, the dogs that got the cards and then those who weren't so lucky.
They weren't lucky enough, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just love, too, that this is another very tiny joke that goes on to inspire another episode, because we know when Bart gets another dog, he actually files for a credit card in Santa's Little Helper's name, and that's how he ends up buying Laddie.
I think he uses the name Santos, Miles. That's a completely different name.
Well, either way, I just love that this is the second time in this episode that there's been a tiny joke that goes on to inspire an entire episode. And Kent Brockman goes on to wish everyone farewell and to remind them that he can be found in a new column in PC World magazine.
This joke just kind of was really weird to see because it shows a picture of him like talking in front of a computer. And like in 1995 times, doing something in PC World magazine or some kind of early podcast thing is a step down. Whereas in today's world, it's kind of almost the opposite. We're like, yeah, you've got a news broadcast that some people still watch, but a lot of people are listening to the podcast now. So it was really weird to see this joke. This is one of the few that I don't think dates as well as the others.
I think that it would be weird for somebody who is watching that didn't grow up in that time. I could see that. I didn't even think twice about it, to be honest, because it was normal to me. But I see your point that it could be lost generationally speaking.
Thank you for phrasing it better.
In phrasing, Bumblebee Man has some choice words for his viewers as well. Muchas gracias, amigos, por todas las memorias, y super gracias a Goya.
You gotta thank your sponsors.
A walking can of Goya beans walks out with Bumblebee Man and all the other zany characters on screen.
Success! They're giving in. Blast! I should have made more demands. Some decent local marmalade for one. Oh well, next time.
I love that Bob is like, oh, I won too easily. I mean, I didn't ask for enough. And also that he's already planning for a next time. All good stuff here. Krusty is taking the end of television a little bit harder than just about everyone else. Krusty is the natural showman that just doesn't want to be off the air, and he's really hurting as he's saying goodbye.
Ah, not my extendo glove. They haven't made those since the war. Oh, not my Paris backdrop. How am I going to make fun of the frogs? Wait, if I could only stay on the air, I'd have 100% of the audience. Think of the ratings!
So clearly, Krusty is coming up with an idea of his own. Back at the Air Force Base, however, Marge and Homer are trying anything and everything they can to get to their children, and Homer had to find out the hard way that they can't go over the fence because we see Marge bandaging up both of his hands. And it's very clearly razor wire, by the way.
But he's unbreakable. He'll be fine.
Marge is just assured that even if they're in a pickle right now, at least they're wearing clean underwear. And we cut to Bart's bedroom where we see a pristine pair of whitey-tighties sitting on the bed. And back to Bart where he's bragging to Lisa about how free and easy he is. There's nothing like an unfurnished basement for pure comfort.
And he's like kind of shaking his booty a little bit on that too.
I will admit that between this episode and Joey from Friends, I went through a long phase in like middle school and high school where I did not wear underwear.
Wow, we're getting personal on this one.
You're welcome, America.
So you're blaming Joey and Bart for that one, are you?
I am, absolutely. Bart because he was cool, and then like Joey because I'm like, well, clearly, Joey gets laid. So
how was that not uncomfortable?
Honestly, I don't really remember. It's been a really long time, but it wasn't ever an issue. Like, there was never any, like, rubbing factors or anything.
It was never a small issue for you? Oh, hurry up. Mom and Dad are probably worried sick about Bart and Lisa.
As Bart and Lisa are strolling through the base, they actually pass by Colonel Happablap, and he's complaining to one of his aides. You know what really frosts my Kelvinator? That fruit cup's probably still laughing at us from his damn hidey hole.
I'd rather take an order from Bill Clinton than hear that guy's snooty, high-toned voice again, sir.
And that is what triggers an idea in Lisa. A high-toned voice? Bart, that's it! I know where Sideshow Bob is hiding. They start running, and Lisa points out that when Bob was broadcasting that message, his voice was higher than normal. And what makes your voice high?
Tight binding underwear?
Helium! Sideshow Bob is in the Duff Blimp.
This is my major issue with this episode, Miles. First of all, they're hiding from the military, and yeah, you're not supposed to be there, but the quickest way to get out of there would be to let them see you. And then secondly, if you know where Bob's hiding, why in the world, as an 8 and 10-year-old, even though you've stopped him numerous times before, why are you not telling all these people with armed weapons where he's at?
Because they've clearly shown that they're incapable of handling the situation. I don't know. Just watch your cartoon and enjoy it, man.
It's a
valid point. That's a valid point.
Something I never caught before watching it this time too, by the way, and it's so blatantly obvious.
It's funny how quickly the helium seems to be taking effect. All Springfield trembles before the might of Sideshow Bob. Blasted helium. Shoo, 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 shoo. Ha ha, that's better. And Bob starts clicking through the television channels. Gone.
Click.
Gone to.
Click.
Fabulous.
Click.
Marvelous.
Click.
And we see the emergency broadcast system logo, and at first, Bob is happy because he seemingly has won, but suddenly, Krusty's voice comes over the speaker.
Hey, hey! Krusty the Clown is back on the air. 12 hours a day. The only game in town.
Krusty? But how?
I'm coming at you live from the Civil Defense Shack in the remote alkali flats of the Springfield Badlands. I'll be beaming out 11 watts of wackiness. Hour after hour of unscripted, unrehearsed comedy featuring, Professor Gascan.
And he just grabs a nearby gas can.
Former President Ike Eisenhower.
And for some reason, there's a picture of Ike in there, too.
Let's get busy.
Oh, my utopia lies in ruins. How naive of me to think a mere atom bomb could fell the shattering Cyclops. Just then, Bob's about to push the red button, causing Springfield's doom, but Bart and Lisa spring up from the hole in the bottom of the blimp.
Well, at least I'll have my revenge.
Bob, no! Don't you see? That'd be taking the easy way out.
I agree. Press.
Click! And this is actually supposed to be a dark moment because a blinding flash fills the air and we cut to break, leaving us to think that the entire town of Springfield has just been obliterated. Find out if Springfield made it when we get back from this break.
I can't wait that long.
Hey, this is the Toph, host of the Gravity Beard Podcast, a variety show with interviews and discussions on a wide range of topics. Our guests have included a viral YouTube star, a former child actor. We've even had a guy on who may have solved the D.B. Cooper case. It's a delicious box of audio chocolate. You never know what you'll get. Find it on Podbean, iTunes, and other places you listen to podcasts. It's the Gravity Beard Podcast. It's what your ears will want to be listening to.
Hi, I'm Mr. Most Days Off. You might remember me from such podcasts as the 50th Podcast Celebration Show and the Michael Price interview. I brought a friend along today to talk to you about an exciting new product.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Richie the Whiz Kid.
Miles, did you know that most people don't know where to get cool pop culture shirts?
I had no idea.
If you go to popthreads.com, you'll find a great selection of t-shirts, and if you use the discount code Simpsons, you can save 15% on your order. And that's good news for everybody.
That is good news for everybody.
And did you know the shirts are also inflammable?
Richie, that means they catch on fire.
I had no idea.
Help support the Best Darn Diddly Review Show by using our discount code Simpsons at popthreads.com. And do try to stay away from open flames.
Bye, everybody.
We come back for our third act, and again, we're supposed to be affected emotionally by what's happening on screen. We start to flash through images of people in Springfield, and then the mushroom cloud appears, implying that all of these residents are now, gone, essentially. But we very quickly see that the mushroom cloud was very, very small, barely setting off the smoke detector inside the blimp and causing the bomb itself to break into pieces, and many, many mice start running and escaping from it. It actually has on the inside of the bomb inscribed, "Best before November 1959.
Damn it, Bob. There were plenty of brand new bombs, but you had to go for that retro 50s charm. Well, if it isn't my arch nemesis Bart Simpson and his sister Lisa, to whom I'm fairly indifferent.
So, Krusty double-crossed you, but your basic plan was pure genius. Where do you get your ideas?
Oh, please. Let's not embarrass us both with that hoary old stall the villain with flattery scheme.
But literally, that's exactly what's happening, because as they're having this conversation, you can see in the background, Lisa has already gotten on the computer, and she's typing away. I should have known you were too smart to fall for that.
Really? What type of smart? Book smart? Because there are a lot of people who are book smart, but it takes a special type of genius to...
All right, Bob, it's over. Come out with your hands up.
No! How did they find me?
And it turns out that the computer Lisa was on was actually controlling the words on the side of the blimp, and she essentially spelled out, "Help! Sideshow Bob is inside. His bomb was a dud. Thank you, Lisa Simpson."
I just picture Wiggum seeing, dud first, just the word dud, and then, reading it out of order and having, a whole set of hijinks involving that where they're not going the right way. But that's just me. They just happen to see the message the way that they were supposed to. I wanted to ask, was when the bomb went off and they had the flashes, is that when we had the flash with Maggie as well?
Yeah, I was actually just about to jump into a lot of this because this whole sequence was a lot of parody of several things. So
Yeah.
the scenes that we flash through in Springfield are parodying the movie Failsafe, where essentially in that movie, at a certain point, Henry Fonda agrees that they are going to be able to drop a bomb on New York to get revenge for the bomb that they had dropped in that movie on their enemy. I'm blanking on who it was and I don't have it right in front of me, but they basically go through still shot images of New Yorkers and New York imagery, implying all this death. And it's much, much more serious, obviously, in the non-Simpsons version of the movie. Also, though, the very last image we see is a close-up of Maggie, and this is a parody of a very controversial political ad that ran in 1964. It was actually an ad by Lyndon Johnson that ran against Goldwater, essentially implying that if elected, he would use a nuclear bomb in Vietnam. It was a very big deal at the time, even though it was only aired once. It caused a lot of stir and ultimately may have made a difference in that election. This is where Bill Oakley points out in the commentary that other shows don't do this. Like, The Simpsons put so much effort into all of these little references, into putting so much into these shows. And he says on the commentary that he hopes the Simpsons viewers, he hopes that's why they appreciate the show the way that they do. And I think it's safe to say, now that the show has been running for 30 plus years, or 30 years at least, I'm pretty sure it's going to keep going for now, that yes, I think that is a big reason why the fans stay with the show, is because of how much we appreciate all of the detail. I mean, that's the reason we have a podcast that's interesting, is we're able to find all of these nuggets of fun facts.
Well, and it's just, again, we've talked about this numerous times. The show makes you feel like a smarter human being, because when I was younger in middle school and high school, you talked about that ad, and then, you happen to go home, and that night this episode's on, and you see that moment with Maggie, and you're like, whoa, how come I never noticed that before? And then all of a sudden you feel like you're in on this inside joke with the writers and the showrunners and the actors, and it just makes you feel like a cool human being, Miles.
It makes learning fun.
Doe! We're learning?
Well, Bob has learned that his plan has once again been foiled by children, but he's not ready to go down without a fight. He actually stabs the blimp, leaving poor Lisa inside to get buried, but he grabs Bart as a hostage.
It looks like he's going to stab Bart initially. Like, he grabs Bart, and then he has the knife in his hand, and he holds it back, and you think he's going to stab Bart, but he stabs next to him to deflate the blimp.
Bob takes Bart, though, and runs to that Harrier that we saw earlier, and inside you just see two buttons. This is the one that was so easy a child could fly it. It had the two buttons, stop and fly. God bless the idiot-proof Air Force. He presses the fly button, and the jets take him straight into a ditch, so he ends up wrecking this plane anywhere. So he gets the next best plane available, the Wright brothers plane.
Yeah! Can you fly better than a fifth grader?
Yeah, that's the new show coming to Fox. Hapablap's upset, though, because not the Wright brothers plane. The Smithsonian's gonna have my ass on a platter. So much to love here. So I mentioned earlier that we have a first-time director and that this episode was so difficult to make. And the Wright brothers plane itself, they noted on the commentary when it first appeared earlier with Grandpa and Bart just how difficult this thing was to animate. That's why it was sitting still. Now it's flying, or at least trying to, and this was just a nightmare sequence, but ultimately a challenge, but something that ended up coming out really, really well, but they just could not express how difficult it was to animate the Wright brothers plane in flights. Like, it took a lot out of them.
Huh. That's interesting, because you've seen the Wright brothers plane in a lot of other cartoons before, but that's interesting to hear.
I don't know exactly what everything was, but it just was notably hard. Something else that's notable here, though, is Homer and Marge are still attempting to get their children, and Homer's finally had enough, and he just drives his car through the fence, allowing them entry. But this just so happens to be right when Bob, now with Bart in tow, is flying the Wright brothers' plane. And they wouldn't have actually cleared the fence had Homer not ran it over. So Homer actually cleared the way for them to make their escape. Because they're only flying like 5 feet off the ground.
Yeah. Well, then to make it worse, he goes over those tire poppers. And so when they fly by, he's got to back the car up.
And now his tires are entirely flat.
Don't!
I actually really love, the Air Force sends out 2 fighter jets to try to engage Bob on this Wright brothers plane, but they just end up zooming straight past him, flying way too quickly, and they actually have to say, bogey's airspeed not sufficient for intercept, suggest we get out and walk.
I think that is my favorite moment in this episode, just the whole animation. When you said it was tough to animate, but just when you see it from their point of view with the plane there, and they just zoom past it in a second, like it's very visually funny.
I love it too that Bob is like enjoying the chivalryness of this pursuit. It feels like a more of a gentleman's game to him because he now has the military with a tank and people literally on foot running underneath the plane trying to catch him.
Did you see that there was an El Barto spray paint on the side of one of the buildings as they were all walking past it?
No, nice catch.
Thank you.
El Barto lives.
I don't know what building it was because they're all just kind of random buildings in the background, but there was one there.
So Homer actually, with flat tires, is able to pass the entire military. To be fair, they have a tank and then are also on foot, so they're not going very fast. But he actually starts driving the car right underneath the plane and yells for Bart to jump. Bart manages to escape Bob's clutches, but when he tosses his bag down first, it hits the hood, bounces under the tire, rolls under the rear tire, and then explodes, which makes Bart a little uneasy about jumping.
Now you, boy! This is another True Lie reference. I didn't even catch this.
I didn't catch it if that would be a True Lie reference or not, but it's very similar to the daughter trying to jump off the plane.
Yeah,
in that movie. You're absolutely right. That's fun.
I didn't. My guy doesn't have this. Like I'm. So
they didn't
glad
mention
that
it on the
you brought
commentary either. So yeah, that's a catch that we just caught right here, right now. Good job.
That's why you listen to this show.
The military has tennis rackets and pool skimmers, and Bart is now trying to convince Bob that he's never going to escape. If the tennis rackets don't get you, the pool skimmers will.
Oh, I never planned to escape. You see, this is a kamikaze mission. You and I are going to kill Krusty the Clown!
So Bob takes a hard left off-road and starts flying at the old shack that Krusty has taken up refuge to broadcast on the emergency broadcast station.
Kids, Itchy and Scratchy can't be here today, but instead, we've got the next best thing. It's the Stingy and Battery Show.
And Krusty holds up a live scorpion and a rusty battery.
They bites and lights and bites and lights and yada yada. You know what I'm talking about.
You can't kill Krusty. He made you what you are. Without him, you wouldn't even be called Sideshow.
Grrr.
Krusty actually starts to hear the commotion coming at him from outside and stops the Itchy and Bitey show. Bitey and Lighty show.
What the hell is that? A lawnmower? Yeah!
Bart's screaming for Krusty to get out of the way, so Krusty actually dives through the window. But he very quickly grows impatient, and he actually lights a cigarette because the plane crash is taking too long.
What is the freaking holdup?
Die, Krusty, die!
Ooh, I like that, Miles.
The plane actually runs into the shed, and it just bounces off, falls to the ground. Sideshow Bob and Bart fall off of it, and then the tank rolls over the plane.
Ooh, sorry. We don't normally drive these in the Air Force.
Gotcha! Ha ha ha, you TV-hating mutant.
What is your major malfunction, Sideshow Bob?
And then Marge comes up and embarrasses Bart. My little sugar bug! I'm so glad you're safe.
But Mom, you're embarrassing me in front of the army guys.
How ironic my crusade against television has come to an end so formulaic. It could have been spewed from the power book of the laziest Hollywood hack. Vroom, vroom, vroom.
Hey, everybody, I'm going to haul ass to Lollapalooza.
And this is where Grandpa Simpson just randomly rolls up on a motorcycle.
Here we go again.
And they purposely put this sequence right up against the 20th Century Fox logo to complete the joke as we hit the end of Act 3. This whole ending sequence is really funny. Admittedly, I did not get this joke until I had the script in my hand, because when I read it the first time with the script, I'm like, oh my god, this is so funny. It's jokes on jokes on jokes, because it's got Grandpa coming up and doing the thing that they parodied earlier, where it's just like stingy old people that say things that they normally wouldn't. But in addition to that, you have Sideshow Bob literally talking about how cheesy and hacky most of these formulaic sitcom episodes are, just to then be paired with the cheesiest and hackiest of cheesy and hacky endings. All of it is just Simpsons genius. And that brings us to the end of the third act and the end of Sideshow Bob's Last Gleaming. Richie, is there anything else that you or that book of yours want to talk about before we call it a day?
Well, my guidebook, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, points out the names of those magazines that are pornos in the army base downstairs. Granny Fanny, Cheek Week, and American Breast Enthusiast. So, in case anybody was wondering about that.
All fine publications.
Absolutely. Miles and I both have subscriptions. Even though they're probably free online. But other than that, I enjoyed this episode. It's not going to be my favorite Bob episode by any stretch of the imagination, but it was still a very fun episode. I was talking about the animation and how I love the fighter jet sequence. I also really, really love the instance where it actually shows the Wright brothers plane hitting the shack, just because it's so minor and so little impact. It's quite hilarious. I could watch clips of it just bumping into it and then falling off of it all day. And that was, I very much enjoyed a lot of the animation moments in this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's an animated show. You know what I'm saying.
Everything was on point in this. And again, everything was new. So that makes it even more difficult for them to produce these shows like this. The creation of this, everything had to be created out of nothing for the first time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would just take forever.
The animation is definitely noteworthy on this. Everything's difficult, but I also mentioned at the top of the show that the writing of this episode also was quite the challenge. The first draft of this episode was actually written by freelance writer Spike Ferristine, who might be most known for writing the Soup Nazi episode of Seinfeld. However, because of the difficulty of this episode, that script was heavily rewritten, almost entirely changed. Not to take away anything from Spike Ferristine's work, it's just that a lot of the characters they had in this episode take a lot of effort to make funny. For instance, they said that Hap Hapablap was one of the hardest characters that they had to write for, because to keep the intensity the way it was and also make it funny was quite the challenge. To put this in perspective, they actually said that Hap Hapablap was more difficult to write than Sideshow Bob, who is also a difficult character to write for just in the way that he speaks. And to put that in perspective, they say that Sideshow Bob is even more difficult to write for than Willie.
Wow.
Now, the other side of that coin, I talked about the fact that Homer is almost not in this episode at all, and Homer is actually the easiest character to write for. So there is a lot of things going into this one that made it a challenge from an animation direction and writing standpoint, but I think it came together to make one hell of a good episode. So far, I would just barely put it in second under Cape Fear as my favorite Sideshow Bob episode, but I know we have more to come.
Yes, we do. One
last fun-ish fact, a little dark, but still fun. I think it's really neat. The military itself has responded. A lot of people who serve in the military, I should say, have had questions or discussions or talks with a lot of the creators of The Simpsons. And they do, to some extent, always be careful that they want to make sure that they're respecting the military, even when they have military in the episode. And a lot of members have responded that the military loves The Simpsons. It's something that's commonly quoted on military bases, and some members of the military have even said that they know of people personally who have quoted The Simpsons while under fire in a war condition.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, that's pretty damn intense. And what a cool way to end this week's episode. That's going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Thank you again so much for joining us through this Simpsons journey through the Golden Age and beyond.
He's Mr. Most Days Off.
And he is Richie the Whiz Kid. You can follow him at thewiz_kid23.
You can also follow him at Mr. Most Days Off.
And you can follow this show at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. Richie and I cannot wait to be back with you again next week for a very special episode. We'll be reviewing The Simpsons' 138th episode spectacular.
And we'll have a couple of special guests with us, like Professor Gascan and former President Ike Eisenhower. So let's get busy.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Every year, new TV shows get canceled. Some make it an entire season, and some don't even make it that far. I'm Ed, host of Unaired, where each week we review a show that was canceled with episodes left unaired, then pitch our ideas for what could have been future episodes of those shows. We've covered shows like Cavemen, the show based on the Geico Cavemen commercials, the ill-fated 2011 Wonder Woman pilot, a show called Look Well, where Adam West plays an aging TV detective who thinks he can solve real crimes, and many more. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, unairedpodcast.com, or wherever you download podcasts. And remember, some things are better left unaired.